Good evening, I'm ABC50's Nick DeFerris.
And I'm Isabella Colello.
Welcome to Honoring Black History. Over the next half hour, you'll hear stories from across the North Country's past.
And you'll meet people making a difference in our community. First in the queue is Fine Print Williams, a local musician who's rewriting the genre of hip-hop. It's unlike most hip-hop music you'll hear on the radio.
It's hard work. If you like, you can see the door. Can be the source of my troubles and be adored. Became passionate and went from ignited to being ignored.
Fine Print Williams is a hip-hop artist in Watertown. He composes, writes, and records all his own songs with a twist. Clean verses and no curses.
I think anytime anybody thinks about Fine Print Williams, they think about give taller, which is the message, time, attention, love, loyalty, effort, and respect. And pouring that into the style of music, no curse words, clean music, family friendly, and trying to teach emotional awareness.
So what was that song about?
Just basically, it's not over until it's over for you. Basically like, don't give up too soon. You're giving up when you still have a chance. You woke up this morning, guess what? You got another chance. So it's not over. Keep going until you cannot go anymore. And that's what that song is about.
He started making music full-time after serving in the Army, but it was in 2018 when his lyrics changed.
A lot of it changed with sobriety. Me, myself, I'm 6 years sober. Once I began to think clearer, I stopped living the way that I was living. I stopped partying and, doing a bunch of things that got me in trouble. It was like I always was known to make music about my life. And I was like, so what, do I stop making music now that I don't live that way, or do I start rapping about what I'm living now? And I couldn't imagine not making music, so I'm not gonna stop doing that. So I just started telling my story, and started how I feel, how I think, things that help me out, and things that build me up, and pouring that into the messages, the lessons I've learned. And that was the best thing that happened as far as for musically and the connection that I had with people.
Going against the grain of conventional hip-hop.
Some people have negative opinions on hip-hop. We didn't have many people to be out there showing an example of doing it differently. I believe that someone will be inspired by it, and they will be able to look past peer pressure and look past saying, if I want to create hip hop, I have to talk about all these negative things in order to be accepted. But if they see someone like myself thriving, speaking about things that are more so productive and that could help people, they can see that as an example and say, I can actually be successful that way. I don't have to go that route. I try to put something that someone can take and be like, you know what? I feel that same way, or that's a mind state that I want to have when I'm faced with the next situation.
And when we were kids, when we were babies, one of the first things that we learned is that we can fall down. And we did a lot of that. And we kept on falling down, but guess what? We kept on getting back up. All of you kept on getting back up because we didn't settle for the ground.
When he's not on stage, he's likely volunteering in the North Country with various organizations because he's hoping to write his own lyrics in history.
Hip hop is a part of Black history. What I'm trying to keep pushing out there throughout the world to show people that, hey, there could be some good that comes out of this art form that we gave birth to. We can actually do some beautiful things and some life-changing things, and we're writing more Black history right now as we live our lives and continue doing what we're doing. I try to give it life and give it a strong purpose so we can look back and be like, we did good.
Stay tuned for more Honoring Black History stories after the break.
Welcome back to ABC50's Honoring Black History. Before the break, you got a taste of local hip-hop music in Watertown.
Up next is a remarkable story of how black soldiers have served on the front lines here in the North Country for over 200 years. I'm Nick DeFerris. I'm here at the Sackett's Harbor State Historic Battlefield Site in Sackett's Harbor, New York, the location of one of the first battles in the War of 1812. Indeed, the first battle fought here was one of the most legendary and storied in the entire war's history, where here, in this small rural community in northern New York, our new nation faced off against the most powerful empire on earth, and won. It's estimated that in 1812, up to 25% of the U.S. Navy was made up of black men, and one of them, Julius Terry, had a front row seat to one of the most incredible victories in American history.
Julius Terry, we know, was here in the community before the War of 1812 because that's documented in one of the county histories. And according to the history, Julius Terry was serving in some manner on the ocean, possibly in the South Pacific. Julius Terry was here as the War of 1812 began. And in July of 1812, Elijah Camp had a volunteer militia artillery, and they defended the village on July 19th when the Canadian Provincial Marine came to attack the village. He helped to man the cannon at that initial battle.
And it was a cannon much like this one right here that was mounted on shore and fired upon the British fleet that won the day. Men like Julius Terry and his compatriots would have seen all too well the dangerous task of loading and firing a mammoth like this. The Americans were so pleased with their victory at that first Battle of Sackett's Harbor that the story of the British defeat was told and retold so many times that it passed into legend. But one thing is known for certain. Julius Terry was indeed one of those responsible for that astonishing American victory.
Well, there's a great deal of legend about that first Battle of Sackett's Harbor. One that the Americans, of course, didn't have cannonballs to fit the cannon, so supposedly the women donated their petticoats, tore them up into pieces of fabric, also carpeting torn up, wrapped the cannonball so it would fit in the cannon to fire it back. And of course, what the accuracy of that would have been would be in great question. And then what did it do if it did hit the vessel? There's many stories about, carnage and death and the masts falling down.
I'm here on the shores of Lake Ontario, and it was here on the morning of July 19th, 1812, that a fleet of British ships sailed down from Canada to attack Sackett's Harbor, which was then the headquarters of the U.S. Army and Navy's northern frontier. Julius Terry was part of the American defense that morning, and according to one fanciful story, a 32-pound cannon mounted on shore delivered a single shot that split the mast of the British flagship in half, sending the fleet home in ruins. For Julius Terry, it would have been quite the morning.
Julius Terry, after that first initial contact, did join the U.S. Navy for the summer of 1812. And he was on board the vessel called the Julia, which sailed down the St. Lawrence River as part of a military operation. We don't believe he continued in the Navy, but he stayed in Sackett's Harbor. He received pensions after the war. He and his family lived on a farm in the town of Hounsfield. We know where it was located, and he died in the 1850s.
Julius Terry remained a celebrated figure even after his death. He was written about and remembered as late as the 1890s, and today he is a reminder to us all that our American history is marvelous in its diversity and wonderful for it.
And you can check it out yourself at the Sackett's Harbor Battlefield site.
We'll have more stories on Black history after the break.
Welcome back to ABC50's Honoring Black History. Tonight, we've taken a look at the impact Black soldiers have had on our incredible history.
And this is continuing into 2024. Up next, you'll meet a Fort Drum colonel whose family's dedication to service has inspired her to serve for over 2 decades.
My mother tried to join the military twice, but her parents told her it wasn't a place for a woman, especially a Black woman, in her age. You know, she was born in the 30s, now it's the 40s, and she's trying to make a breakthrough, and her parents told her no.
Leading the way for new generations, Lieutenant Colonel Christina Buckner has military service in her blood.
So I am the youngest of 8 children, all of which, except 2, have served in the military. Every branch except for the Coast Guard. You know, the funny story is I didn't even want to be in the military.
Really?
Because my siblings had done it. That's why I was doubling down on I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to do those things.
Nonetheless inspired by her family, she pursued a military medical career, enlisting as an Army dental assistant in 1998 and commissioning a few years later as an Army Service Corps officer, a role allowing her to command units around the world.
I have been able to serve overseas in Iraq 3 times and Afghanistan once. And, you know, I've watched a lot of our service members pay the ultimate sacrifice for freedom. But it's a reward to me to say that I've been there and I've been able to protect our borders and to support the cause for the American people. It's protecting the freedoms at the end of the day.
But she found some of the larger obstacles outside of the battlefield, similar to ones her mother faced decades before.
A lot of things have changed since 1998. That's when I joined. And a lot of things have changed since the early 50s when my mother tried to join, and then when my dad served. You know, there was a reason why my mother's family told her, you can't join, this is not the place for a Black woman. You know, when I joined in 1998, there was only one general officer in Army medicine that looked like me and shared the same service corps. And now, years later, we have evolved. There are several that look for me and share the same service corps. When I first started, a woman could not serve in the infantry. A woman could not go that far forward into combat, but now you have us wearing ranger tabs and we're in infantry units, so lots of evolution occurred. People have outwardly said some interesting things, you know, to me, but that's okay because I've still been able to prove them wrong in many ways and overcome.
And become a highly decorated medical commander. She currently leads Fort Drum's medical activity, where she pushes others to find strength in their differences.
Biases are something that we can't navigate. I can't read your mind, and nor can you read mine. But you have to always be able to clearly articulate your goals and what you're trying to achieve and what you're here for, and then you live by them. You can't let biases be a deterrent for how you operate. We acknowledge that they're present, and we acknowledge that they may be a limitation at times. But as long as I know and they know they have done their best, we will prevail. If you want to do it, you can do it, because it all comes down to mindset. What is it that you're seeking to achieve in life? And you have to move as if there are no boundaries in your way. If you keep that at the forefront of your mind, using representation and examples of others who have achieved the things that you want to achieve, nothing's in your way. So it feels nice to have overcome all that I have, to have gotten here and seeing others rise in the ranks. You know, I don't want to say there are no excuses, because we always have things that get in our way. But the path is clear now.
Continuing her family's legacy of service.
You know, whether being a woman or a Black woman, it's about leadership. It's about exuding confidence in your inner abilities to succeed and to lead, and I will overcome. I did not think many years ago that I would ever be here, you know, but I'm here now. And then the ability to change and impact and affect so many people's lives and to deliver a service and to see myself in this form having evolved after so many years is a blessing. But there's still so much ahead. It's a journey ahead. But I would say thanks to my mom, though. She is the reason why, her and my dad are the reason why I'm where I am today. So That little kid who couldn't join the military, buried in the National Cemetery, but raised, 6 successful service members. That's incredible. So sometimes you might not be able to do a thing, but you can inspire others to do a thing. So that's what I do. So thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Buckner, for sharing your family's history.
We'll have our final story after the break.
Welcome back to ABC50's Honoring Black History. Throughout the evening, we've shared stories celebrating Black history throughout the North Country.
And we're going to end tonight at the Fort Drum military base with an often untold story of slavery here in the North Country. I'm ABC50's Nick DeFerris. I'm here at one of the most magnificent houses in all New York State, the Luray Mansion in Jefferson County, built by the Frenchman James Luray de Chameau in 1826. And in nearly 2 centuries of this house's glorious history, it's the often untold stories of Black and enslaved individuals who lived here that have helped make this place the marvel that it is. James Luray de Chameau. He was a man whose name is entwined forever with the history of the North Country and the history of early America. He was a man who believed wholeheartedly in the principles of the American Revolution, freedom, equality, and independence. But we know that here on his estate, he kept at least 3 enslaved individuals.
I think most of the story begins when he first comes to northern New York in 1808 and chooses this location as his house. At that point, we know that he travels with 3 enslaved people, one of whom is the only one whose name we know is the slave Rachel, that travels with him and his family. So Rachel comes with the family in 1808, actually sails from France with them. She was the caretaker for James's children, Vincent and Alexander. Vincent, his oldest son, Alexander, the middle son, and his daughter Therese, who is the daughter, who served as hostess here for James. We only know her first name. The history books don't record her as having a last name, and her stone doesn't either. And unfortunately, the amount of historic knowledge we have of Rachel and the other 2 enslaved persons in Luray's care is pretty sparse. We kind of piece it together from multiple things. She was an immense caretaker to the house, that if you wanted to see James or one of the children, like of Vincent when they had a land office here in the mansion, that you had to pass Rachel's okay to get into the house.
Though the family lived in the grand style, Rachel's own life was far more simple. This stone house, known as Rachel's house, still stands behind the mansion, a rare example of how a servant and person of color lived in the first half of the 19th century here in northern New York. And like so many things at the Luray Mansion, it represents a great divide between the Lurays and those that served them.
And in order to entertain the dignitaries, high society, and family that the Lurays hosted here at their mansion, the work of servants and enslaved individuals took place down here, in the house's original kitchen, complete with its original brick fireplace and dumbwaiter.
The house is built right before New York State emancipation, 1827, and we know from various anecdotal history recordings that James had offered the slaves in his care, the enslaved people that he owned at that point, he offered them their freedom. I don't know if he came to a moral and ethical, like LaRae came to a moral or ethical awakening. I don't know if that was possible. Their family made a fortune in shipping people for years. I like to mention Rachel's name as much as possible in our history of when I give tours here at the mansion. And Rachel's, unfortunately, has become the caretaker of memory for the enslaved people that LaRae owned, that we don't know their name, we don't know their gender, we don't know what their jobs here were.
Thank you to everyone who sat down with us to share their story.
And a special thanks to our viewers for joining us as we celebrate Black history.
For these stories and more, you can head to our website, www.informnny.com.
I'm ABC50's Nick DeFerris.
I'm Isabella Colello.
Have a great evening.